The purpose of worship is to point our eyes to Jesus. The purpose of communion is to point our eyes to Jesus. The purpose of preaching is to point our eyes to Jesus. This is the point. This is the point of church. And if we'll all just keep our eyes on Jesus, it helps us from keeping our eyes on each other and nitpicking each other to death. We must make Christ our focus. See, if my focus is on me rather than Christ, then all I'm going to be concerned about is, are my needs being met? A house divided against itself cannot stand. It will not stand. So most churches in America don't die by attack from without. They implode from within. And Paul is trying to deal with this here because this church at Philippi is a good church. They're a really good church, but they have a problem. And he addresses the problem here beginning in verse number 1. He says, "Therefore, my beloved and longed for brethren, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, beloved." Do you get the love that he has for this church? He basically, the word beloved there, he goes, "Therefore, my beloved and longed for brethren." He goes, he starts by telling him how much he loves them, and then he ends the verse by telling him how much he loves them. I love you guys, and I long for you. I'm in prison. It's been 3 years since I've seen you. I miss you, and I want to be where you are. I want to be in that church in Philippi. I long for you. And then he moves into kind of the problem. Verse number 2. I implore Euodia and I implore Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. So obviously there's a fraction in the church between two women. Euodia and Syntyche are the two women that are causing the problem. And notice that they are women that Paul cares about, beginning verse 3. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel. So if you go back and you remember the story of the church at Philippi, so normally when Paul would come into a town, he would go to the synagogue. But Philippi didn't have a synagogue because in Philippi, there was not 10 Jewish men that would make up a group of people that could form a synagogue. So they didn't have a synagogue. So basically the church at Philippi was started by a bunch of women. It was a bunch of women and Paul who started the church at Philippi. Now we don't know this for a fact, but I think Euodia and Syntyche were a part of that early group, the early group of women that made up that church. And he goes, they labored with me. They're the ones that helped plant the seed. They're the ones that helped birth this church. And he goes, I urge you to, these are women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also and the rest of my fellow soldiers whose names are in the book of life. So his point being that these two women are obviously at odds with one another, and they're creating division in the church, and they're making people pick a side. You're either with Euodia or you're with Syntyche, and it's dividing the church. So he's urging the church for there to be reconciliation. Then he says, verse 4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is at hand. So there's a couple words I want you to focus on. Notice what he says in verse number 1 when he says, so stand fast in the Lord. This church is being pulled apart by these two women. And he wants them to stand together against this division that is happening. And this is really the thrust of this particular sermon, is that how can we stand together while the world is trying to pull us apart? Because I want this church to be a church that stands united together, proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Word of God. And we can, if we're not careful, we can implode from within. We can turn on one another. I think that's one of the things, if I can get into this broad theme that's happening with our country, is we are imploding from within. We are attacking one another from within. And this can happen in a country, it can happen in a church. And so Paul is trying to stop this. He's trying to stop it with the first 5 verses of chapter 4. So this is a really, really important sermon, and I don't have a lot of time to preach on it. So you're going to have to buckle up, okay? because we're going to go quickly here. Our church will stand together if we do 7 things. 1, make love our priority. If we make love our priority. Paul is saying, if this church is going to make it, you must love one another like I love you. Love has to be the foundation for a church to survive. The foundation of a house is the most important for the longevity of the house. If the foundation is bad, the house will crumble. I remember when we bought this land, and there was a house in this neighborhood over here that they talked about how that there was so much damage to the house because they got the foundation wrong. Because one of the things we found out about our property here is we have a lot of springs or a lot of water, so we've ran into issues with that. When we built the building up top and we laid we like I did anything, I stood on the hill and watched them. But when they laid the asphalt, it was 2 weeks later and the asphalt was bubbling up because we had springs under the asphalt and it was causing problems. And so we had to deal with that particular issue. This property has been awesome, but we have spent so much money here fixing stuff under the ground. But it's so important. You got to get the foundation right. And the same thing is true with us. We've got to get the foundation right. Our church must make as our priority love for one another. Now, the mistake that we make with love is that we tie it to our feelings. We so associate love with our feelings, but that's not love at all. Love is 2 things. It is a choice and it is an action. It's not what I feel. Feelings are good. It's good when my feelings match up what I say that I do. But love is an action and love is a choice. I choose to love people. So, if we have something that's not built on love, it's not going to last. If it's not built on love, it's not going to last. Because when you love something, you don't give up easily on it. If you love your kids, you're going to stick with your kids. You're going to try to help your kids and do all you can to support your kids, even when they're making you pull your hair out. Right? Because you love them. And it's a choice that you make. And the same is true with this church. We love the lost. We love our city. We love each other. And becoming a part of this body means that you make that commitment to love it no matter what. Love has to be at the core. It has to be the priority. It has to be the thing that drives us. And Paul says, I love you guys. And he emphasizes it twice. So he's saying, if this church is going to make it, you got to love one another like I love you. 2, if we're going to make it as a church, we've got to make people our purpose. We've got to make people our purpose. Notice what he says. He says, therefore, my beloved and longed for brethren, my joy and my crown. So, what is your prized possession? What is the one thing that means the most to you? Now, for a lot of people, it's material stuff, right? My house is my joy, my prize. Look at my lawn. Some people, it's their lawn. It's their... Where I would tend to struggle or I got to be careful about is it can become my automobile, my car. This is my prized possession. Don't you ding my car. Don't you... You can ding my car all you want. I don't care. If you want to sit out there and bang against it all day, I don't care. But the point is that if I have a worldly possession that could drag me down, it could be that. Maybe your prized possession is an award or an achievement that you have accomplished. This is your prize. This is your prize trophy. Or maybe it's a position. I don't know what your prized possession is, but you know what Paul's prized possession was? People. You are my joy and my crown. He goes, when I think of what God has done in your life and through you and how he has saved you and and how he has changed you and how I had a part in that. That's my joy. That's my crown. People are my joy and my crown. That's what Paul is saying. If we're going to survive as a church, we must care deeply for one another. An organization will not last if you don't care about the customer. It won't last. Everybody's shocked at the success of Chick-fil-A. Right? Let me tell you something. The chicken ain't that good. Did I just speak heresy right now? I think I spoke heresy from the pulpit. You know what puts them over the top is their customer service. You walk in, how may I help you? My pleasure. Now, I'm not going to name another chicken place in town, but I went to recently. The guy that helped me had headphones on behind the counter. I stood there for 2 minutes. It was awkward. Then I went to get his attention. Oh, we have a customer here. And then I was like bothering his music by giving my order out. And I'm like, their chicken wasn't that good for me to come back and have to deal with that. Right? I mean, it's just the thing that I think that the success is not so much in the chicken, although it's okay. The thing that makes it as good is it's an enjoyable experience for people. They go there and you genuinely feel like the people that are serving you care about you. If there is selfishness in a church, it will disintegrate. So if I walk into a church and it's all that I'm thinking about is where I'm going to sit and what I want and what I expect and what I enjoy and this is what and I'm not thinking about others, I am dooming the church in a sense. Because if you fill your auditorium and you fill your congregation and you fill your church roll with people who only care about themselves, we're just going to devour and eat one another. Not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense. Paul says, you are my joy and my crown. I would do anything for you. And we must have the same mentality. If we're going to last as a church, we must make people our purpose. I'm not here just to have my needs met. I'm here to meet your needs. Jesus Christ did not come to be served, but to and give his life a ransom for many. So if our church is going to survive, it's going to survive because we are an organization where people are our purpose. We say this in our membership class, when you're going to go through membership class. Every member is a minister. What are you doing for the kingdom? What are you doing in the church? You have a bigger role than just taking up a seat. Although that role is important. Because if you didn't take up a seat, we would have nobody to talk to. But what are you doing in the bigger picture? You say, well, I can't do much. Can you hand someone a bulletin? Can you write a note? Can you watch some kids in a nursery? You maybe can't sing, but there's something you can do. So we must be about serving others, helping others, ministering to others, blessing others. Once we become about us, we are on the road to implosion. And so Paul is emphasizing that here. You are my joy and my crown. Who's your joy and who's your crown? Number 3, we must make unity our goal. If we're going to last, if our church is going to stand in these dark days, we must make unity our goal. This is an interesting wording in verse number 2. Implore is not a word we use a lot, is it? Like, I don't use that. I implore you. Okay. But you understand what the word implore means, right? It means to beg. So he's saying, I beg Euodia and I beg Syntyche to be of the same mind. So he doesn't kind of throw the two. If I was writing this, I'd go, I beg Euodia and Syntyche to be of the same mind. So he's literally, think of it this way. I beg you, Euodia, and I beg you, Syntyche, to be of the same mind. He's looking them in the eye. He's begging them to be together. He is begging these women to get along, to settle their differences. Why is he doing that? Because there's a lot of dysfunction in the world. Is there not? Ask counselors, ask people who deal with people and their issues on a regular basis. There's a lot of dysfunction in the world. Just talk to somebody on the street, ask them to give you their family history. Man, sometimes you'll just run into people, it's all over the place. There's a lot of dysfunction in the world. There is tension that comes with dysfunction. You know, we got the holidays coming up. A lot of people don't like the holidays. Why? Because their family's dysfunctional. And I got to go hang out with mom and it's awkward. Right? Not my mom. Do not say. I love hanging out with my mother. Okay, so that's not the point. The point is maybe you feel that way, right? That it's like, man, I got to go there and I got to hang out with Uncle so-and-so and he's weird and it's just dysfunctional, you know? And so we just people dread the holidays and they dread getting together with family because it's just this dysfunction. So what happens when we feel dysfunction? Man, we want out. I want to get out of this dysfunctional relationship. So what's happening in the church is these two women are going at each other. It's making the family dysfunctional. So what he's encouraging them to do is settle your differences, get along, be in unity together because you're creating dysfunction in the church. You don't have to be around people very long to figure out there's some dysfunction here. And I don't want any part of this. So let me warn you about this too. To you people in particular who think you're good. Good people can often be the pawns of Satan. They can. The devil can use good people to cause division in a good church. So we must make unity our goal. If we're going to die on a hill, let's make sure it's a hill worth dying on. And I get the feeling that this hill these two women are dying on, it doesn't tell us the details, is not a hill worth dying on. So he's like, you women need to get together. And Satan is using you two to start problems and create dysfunction in the church so that when new people come in, they're like, no interest in the dysfunction. So if we're going to last as a church, we need to be a church where we're unified, we're together. Unity is our goal. We want to work out differences. We want to settle differences. We want to be on the same page and working together. And this is what Paul is imploring here. He's begging them to get along, be unified, stop creating division. Number 4, if our church is going to survive, we must make reconciliation our work. We must make reconciliation our work. So then he stops talking to the women, and then he talks to the church in general. He says, I urge you also, true companions, help these women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and the rest of the fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. Now, what's verse 3 mean? Why is he saying this? Okay, so what happens when there is a disagreement? So you disagree with something in your family, at your job, whatever. What we do is we oftentimes don't go to the person that we have a problem with. We try to rally support for us. So we go over here and we're like, you know what? I don't really like Jeff. Do you like Jeff? Paula likes Jeff, but I don't know. What are your issues with Jeff? Okay, now, what are we doing? We feel this way towards Jeff, and we want to rally other people to feel this. We don't want to be alone in this feeling. So we want to rally other people so we feel this certain level of support. That's what we do. What he's saying in verse number 3 is that's the wrong way. What he's saying here is don't be a part of the problem, be a part of the solution. Don't side with the women, be the one that brings the women together. So this is what they should have done. So some Euodia comes and says, you know what, I got a problem with Syntyche. You know what my response to Euodia should be? You need to go talk to Syntyche. I'm not going to be a part of this. This is not between me and you. This is between you and Syntyche, or you and Euodia, or whoever. So if somebody comes to you and goes, you know what, man, I got a problem with Jeff. This is exactly what you should do. I don't see Jeff here. Jeff ain't here. So it ain't my problem. That's you and Jeff's problem. You need to go talk to Jeff. So what are you doing there? You're making reconciliation. I have issues with you. I want to bring you two together. I don't want to be the one that, I'm with Jeff. How dare you talk about my friend that way? I don't want to draw a line. I want to erase the line and bring people together. And that's what he's saying to this church. Stop. Clement, you stop going with them, and you other people stop going with them. Bring these women together. Stop being the one that divides. Be in the business of reconciliation, not in the business of division. What are you in? Are you in the business of reconciliation, or are you in the business of division? A house divided against itself will not going to stand. So make reconciliation our work. This is how we're going to last. We're not dividing people. We're bringing people together. Number 5, quickly, make Christ our focus. I want you to notice several words in the text that I think are important. Verse 1, what does he say? My beloved and longed for, brethren, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord. Verse number 2, I implore Euodia and Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Verse number 4, rejoice in the Lord always. That's in verse number 4. 5, how does the text end? The Lord is at hand. What's he saying? He's saying the Lord is here. A lot of people like to interpret that it means that the Lord's coming back soon. That is true, but he's also, I think, saying the Lord is here. He's here. You know, several months ago, we had a man that was recently elected, a politician, come to our church, and he sat on the second row over here. Oh, man. You thought Jesus Christ walked in the room. Because, see, I can look out here and watch you all. And everybody's like, oh. And I could see you talking, and I knew what you were saying. Do you see who's here? Do you see who's here? You know, so I'd say something funny, and y'all would look at him to see if he's laughing. Oh, good, he's laughing. Oh, we can laugh too. Look, if Pat Mahomes walked in this auditorium, yeah, Pat Mahomes needs Jesus too. If Pat Mahomes walked in this auditorium, I might as well put a mask on, because ain't one of you to look at me. You know, I'll be looking at, Pat Mahomes is here, Pat Mahomes is here. See, this is a problem. When we go to church, when we're with people, the purpose of this is to get our eyes on the Lord, not on each other. The purpose of worship is to point our eyes to Jesus. The purpose of communion is to point our eyes to Jesus. The purpose of preaching is to point our eyes to Jesus. This is the point. This is the point of church. And if we'll all just keep our eyes on Jesus, it helps us from keeping our eyes on each other and nitpicking each other to death. We must make Christ our focus. See, if my focus is on me, and rather than Christ, then all I'm going to be concerned about are my needs being met. I came to that church and not one person said anything to me. Why did you come to the church? Did you come, was it a social thing for you? You needed somebody to make you feel welcome? Or did you come to church to hear about Jesus and learn about Jesus and sing about Jesus and worship Jesus? If my focus is on others, I become very judgmental, and or I become very discouraged because my focus is on them. The purpose of church is to get our eyes on Jesus. And what's he saying here? Get your eyes on the Lord. Get your eyes on the Lord. Make Christ our focus. Number 6, how are we going to last as a church? If we make joy our resolve. If we make joy our resolve. Rejoice, there's those 3 words again, in the Lord always. Do we always have things to be happy about? No. Many of you, I don't know how many of you knew Dell Downs. Dell was the man who played trumpet for us. He played every Christmas Eve service. Dell would play trumpet for us. Dale went to heaven 8:30 last Sunday night. Joe and I were actually having dinner together after church, and Sally, Dell's wife, called Joe and said that he had passed. I just happened to be with him, and so Joe and I went up to the hospital. When we walked in the door, there's Dale's body, his physical body laying there with he's not breathing anymore, he's gone. And the first thing that his wife says to me is, he's home. Home. We thought he was going to get, this is what she said, we thought he was going to get better, and I guess he did. Because he's better now. Now, you know what I love about that? Is Sally was making a choice, right? And the choice was, I'm going to focus on that Dale is not in any more pain. He's with the Lord. I'm going to focus on the fact that he's home now. And I'm going to rejoice for him. I'm going to weep because he's gone. This is what the Bible says when it says we sorrow, not as those who do not have hope. Because we have hope, don't we? This is the problem in churches, okay? And this is not just in the church. This is in life. We tend to focus on what's wrong rather than what's right. This is what's wrong with the church. This is what's wrong with that person, you know. There's always going to be areas that there can be improvement in any institution and in any person. Because now, you may think, man, I have arrived, but you have not arrived. So, you're not going to come across a single human being who they can't be better, because we're all sinners. But what we tend to do is we tend to lock in on people's deficiencies and churches' deficiencies. And so what we tend to do is this is what we lock in on. And Paul is saying, look, stop focusing so much on the negative and choose to rejoice in the Lord. Our focus should be on Christ and what he is doing and what he has done and what he will do, and this should bring joy to our hearts no matter what we feel. If everybody walks into church and they're like, how you doing? Well, getting by. Boy, they're going to be lining up at the doors to come into this joint, aren't they? There's a time for that. There's a time to weep, but there's a time to rejoice. Is God good or is he not? Has he not done so much for us that we could lock in on and think about? But this is what we do. We forget the past. You say, well, Paul said, you preached just a few weeks ago, forget the past. But this is the problem. We live too much in the moment, and we don't think about all that God has done for us. Have you read the Psalms? They're all chronicling this. Okay, God, I feel this way, but then when I reflect on what you have done, you are a good God. And I choose to focus on what you've done, and I choose to be joyful no matter what. And this is how we're going to survive as a church, is we make joy our resolve. Number 7, how are we going to survive? How are we going to stand as a church if we make gentleness our reputation? We must make gentleness our reputation. Let your gentleness, he says in verse 5, be known to all men. We live in an age where harshness rules. And what has magnified that? The social media. It is easy for me to sit at a computer and type stuff and post it onto social media and not have to look you in the eye and say it. And be rude and crude and, and share stuff that's inappropriate or harsh. But it's important that we learn to be gentle with one another. I see this a lot with older people and younger people and older people. I talk to a lot of older people and they're like, these young kids, this young crowd, these millennials, they just don't get it. They're not going to make it. Can I tell you older people something? The same thing you say about the younger generation is the same thing your parents said about you. They hated your music. Come on now. They hated your music. They thought your attitude stunk. They're like, we don't have a shot. It's easy when we get old to look back with perspective. And it's easy to forget what a mess we were. Right? I wish them kids would get it together. Well, how long did it take you to get it together? Huh? There's times where I want to come down hard on my kids. And if necessary, I do. But then I think about myself. I don't really even thought I had life kind of remotely figured out till I hit my late 40s. And now that I've hit 50, I'm not even sure I had it figured out at 40. So if you're older, be gentle. Oh, they don't need gentleness, man. They need a kick in the behind. That's what they need. Right? But let me tell you what they're saying about you. I wish Grandpa would speed up. Right? I wish he'd move quicker. He'd taken his time. I wish we were more progressive. I wish we did. Just look, you younger people, be patient with the older people. They got a lot of history. They have a lot of experience. They're slower to make decisions than you are. When we planted this church, I was 28 years old. It horrifies me to think about it now. I wouldn't do it at 50. I have a lot more to lose now. I have nothing to lose at 28. What, my bank account going to be empty? It's at 0 now, so let's go. Right? Look, there's a joy of youth. There's an excitement of youth. But can I just challenge you young people? You need these older people. You need their wisdom. You need their discernment. You need to sit down. If I could challenge you younger people, spend time with older people. And can I challenge you older people? Spend time with younger people. Take them to lunch. Invest in them. We need each other. I need some younger kids to come up when I can't do it anymore. And if all I do is go, bunch of young whippersnappers, then all that's going to hang out with me is everybody that feels the same way. Yeah, a bunch of young whippersnappers. Yeah, wonder why none of them come here. Oh, they just don't love the word. No, you're a jerk. Am I jumping to conclusions? Am I totally preaching against what I said? Can we just be gentle with all men? What is that? That means just don't jump to conclusions. That means don't judge so quickly. It means be kind to one another. See, what happens is when we're harsh with one another, I'm going to tell you right now, some of the most painful things to me have not been people that have done to me, it's been things they've said to me. You sure need to engage your mind before you engage this mouth. Because you may say something to a younger person that may alienate them, that may hurt them deeply. Let me give you an example. The church I grew up in. There was a lady in the church. My parents were good people and they loved the Lord. And there was a lady in the church and she had some kids that were messes. And jealousy kind of crept in because the Doss kids were good kids, although she didn't know us. She said to my mother, I cannot wait until your kids fall. I can't wait till your kids fall. I've never, ever forgotten that. Are we not here to help one another and not pull each other down? So this woman could have come alongside my mother and said, look, these are some things my kids did that these are some things that I did that I think hurt my kids. These are some things that you can do to help your kids. She was an older woman whose kids were older and had made bad mistakes, but instead she just said, I can't wait till your kids fall. I can't wait till your kids mess up. That's not being gentle. I love this church. I love you. And I want to see us go together until God calls us home. You know what the devil wants to do? Rip us apart. Rip us apart. Rip us apart. Let's stand together till he calls us home. So let's make love our priority. Let's make people our purpose. Let's make unity our goal. Let's make reconciliation our work. Let's make Christ our focus. Let's make joy our resolve. And let's make gentleness our reputation. You go there, man, they're going to love you no matter what. They're going to love you no matter who you are. They're going to love you no matter what. I pray that that's the reputation of our church. Would you join me in praying for the same? Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Now look, I know it's super late, but I'm not going to miss this moment. God is doing a good thing here. We want him to continue to do a good thing here. We don't want to make mistakes. So would you pray with me as I pray for our church? Father, I thank you for this church. I thank you for what you have done here. You have obviously been gracious to us. You have given us 10,000 times more than we deserve. When I think of the people who make up this body and how blessed we are to be with them and to do life with them. When I think of how you have provided for us over the years and taken care of our needs, it is obvious to me that your grace has been on us and your favor has been on us, and we thank you for it. And we as a church today, we identify that we have an enemy, and he wants to destroy our church. And he wants to destroy us from the inside. So Lord, I pray for those who are in this room today, who are at each other's throats, who are angry with one another, who are frustrated with one another, that they would go to each other and that they would seek reconciliation. Maybe, Lord, they just agree to disagree, but you're my brother, you're my sister. We're going to be together forever, but we're going to work this out. So, Lord, I pray, make our church a church of love. Make our church a church of unity. Make our church a church of reconciliation. Lord, remove judgment from our hearts. May we be gentle with one another. May we love one another. May we be a light in this dark city for the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ, because we are living as Jesus told us to live. So help us to leave here and live it. We pray in your wonderful name, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you for listening to our series on Philippians with Pastor Mark Doss. If you have questions about today's message, please contact our church office at info@topekabaptist.org. Give us a call at 785-862-0988 or check us out online at topekabaptist.org.